Don't mess around with the biggest manufacturing power in the world at any given moment in history.
For years, the US used chips to choke China. Now China using rare earths to choke back.
The twist. China is fine with that because now China quietly holds more of the cards.
While everyone was distracted, China just made a series of power moves that left the White House scrambling and Wall Street bleeding. We're talking a $1 trillion market crash in a single day. This is Trade War 2.0, and China is done playing defense. Today we're breaking down exactly how they checkmated Trump. Let's get into it.
My simple point is very elegant and simple. Don't mess around with the biggest manufacturing power in the world at any given moment in history. China's manufacturing output today is more than the combined amount of the United States, EU, Japan, and quite a few others combined together. China's production of iron and steel is more than the next 10 largest iron and steel makers in the world combined together. So you want to mess up with China for your own detriment or for your own peril? You do not want to do that. So the first point I want to make is that President Trump and his administration should serve themselves better to have a more keener and more accurate and more pragmatic and realistic perception of what China is today.
I think Victor Gao is underselling this point. When he says don't mess with the biggest manufacturing power, the numbers are staggering. It's not just bigger. China's manufacturing output is 3 times the US's share. It's 6 times Japan's and 9 times Germany's. In fact, China's share of global manufacturing is now larger than the US, the EU, and Japan combined. And steel, China produces more crude steel than the next 10 largest producers put together. We're talking about 79.7 million tons in July 2025 alone. So when Trump throws tariffs around, he's not punching an equal. He's picking a fight with a heavyweight that has a 35% share of the world's entire manufacturing output. It's economic suicide. Now here's some more comments. Chinese people made more progress in the last 30 years than Europe and America combined without wars. We call that fuck around and find out. Impose a big export tax on MAGA merchandise. And yes, China is proof that socialism, communism works.
So the stock market crashed today. Dow Jones, Nasdaq all down. China hit back with rare earths. So here's some details. China announced that the new export control on rare earths starting December the 1st. Anything made with Chinese rare earth materials, tag, or refining method will need government approval to leave the country. Even products made overseas using Chinese parts are covered. This is a full chain lock. Just in case if you don't know what rare earth is, rare earths are backbone of modern tech. They power EV motors, wind turbines, fighter jets, and every high-end chip. China refined about 70% of the world's supply, so if Beijing tighten export, the whole global supply chain will feel it. Trump exploded on Truth Social. He called China's hostile, accused it of trying to capture the world, and threatened new tariffs. Right now, how US deal with China is only through tariff at this moment. He said he might cancel his meeting with Xi. It's not canceled. He's just thinking about it, and they're probably going to meet next 2 weeks. These are a couple of things China did for the last couple of days. China opened an antitrust case against Qualcomm. Second, it locked down the rare earth exports. And third, it added a special port fee on US ships. For years, the US used chips to choke China. Now China using rare earths to choke back. This is basically Trade War 2.0. China is not defending anymore. It is actually taking offense.
Exactly. Trade War 2.0. China is no longer reacting. They are proactively using their economic arsenal. He mentions the new export controls, the antitrust case against Qualcomm, the new port fees on US ships. This is a coordinated multi-front economic assault. The port fees alone are a direct tax on American shipping, charging $56 per net ton on US vessels starting this week. The new rare earth rules, which go into effect on December 1st, are the final nail in the coffin. They cover the entire supply chain. Any product made with Chinese rare earth tech or refining methods, even if assembled overseas, needs a license to be exported. It's a full chain lockdown. For years, the US used chip restrictions to try and choke China's tech industry. Now, as he says, China is using its control over the building blocks of all technology to choke back. This isn't a defensive move. This is a checkmate. And now for comments. Please, China, we Americans are not in any position to endure anymore. Despite what our esteemed President Trump is saying, America is in deep financial trouble. We, the American people, must pay all these silly tariffs. I beg the Beijing government to show mercy towards us ordinary American citizens. Good. Without rare earth, US can't produce lethal weapons, and with less lethal weapons from US, the world will be at peace.
Stock market dropped $1 trillion today. China announced yesterday that they were restricting the export of rare earth metals. This was a huge deal because they control roughly 80% of the entire world supply, and those materials are sorely needed for industries like AI and computing. Trump announced that he was going to retaliate with tariffs this morning, which tanked the entire market. He later solidified those threats with an additional 100% tariff on Chinese goods. There's a lot of buzz online about insiders making trades to profit all of this news before it officially came out. Because this morning, people built huge short positions, hundreds of millions of dollars, which are now billions in profit. Rare earth metal stocks have already gone up several 100% this year, but they're likely to continue to go up as long as this trade war escalates.
A $1 trillion wipeout. Let that sink in. This is the market reacting to the kill switch that China just flipped. He mentions China controls 80% of the world's supply of rare earths. The reality is even more granular and even more damning for the West. China accounts for about 70% of the world's rare earth mining, but critically, it controls 90% of the processing. That means even if the US digs these minerals out of the ground in California, they still have to send them to China to be refined into anything useful. The US currently sources 70% of its rare earth compounds directly from China. It's a chokehold. And Trump's response? A 100% tariff. That's not a strategy, that's a tantrum. It does nothing to solve the fundamental problem that the entire high-tech US economy, from iPhones to F-35 fighter jets, runs on materials that China controls. The market knows this, which is why it panicked. And now a comment. I work in jewelry and our merchandise has needed price changes every 2 weeks because of how unstable the economy has gotten since he took office. We have also been getting less and less business. Now here's a few comments from you guys from the last video. America is basically a beggar with a Gucci belt. USA is a country living on borrowed money. Make that make sense. China doesn't need the US to thrive for the bright future. Make no mistake, China is not a country but pretends to be a country. They are a 5,000-year-old civilization. They have existed for millenniums, long before the existence of the US. With or without the US, China will move on into the future.
US-China tensions have entered a new stage, and once again, Trump will win. Here is what happened this week. China tightened export controls on rare earth metals, the materials the world needs for chips, EVs, and defense. Trump fired back right away, announcing a 100% tariff on Chinese goods. But here is what most people missed. China's move wasn't random. It came after the US imposed steep port fees on ships owned or operated by Chinese companies. And behind that, Washington's frustration that China stopped buying US soybeans. The result, global stock markets plunged, panic spread. But honestly, there is no need to panic. This pattern, fight, pause, repeat, will probably last for years. And just like every round before, Trump will declare victory. Because in Trump's world, there is only one outcome, winning. But here is the twist. China is fine with that, because now China quietly holds more of the cards. The pattern goes like this. China makes a move. The US reacts. Negotiations happen. China partially rolls back. Then Trump announces victory, but China actually pays no price. That's what this new phase looks like. My personal view, there won't be a major military conflict. The shouting may sound ugly, but it's the reality we will have to live with. And over time, more Americans will realize something simple. China doesn't actually want to replace the US. Do you know why?
This is the most important point that the mainstream media completely misses. He's right. China is fine with Trump declaring victory because they're the ones quietly securing the real wins. Let's look at the data behind why China holds more of the cards. A Rand Corporation analysis shows the US is 3 times more exposed to Chinese manufacturing inputs than China is to US inputs. For roughly 40% of the goods China sells to the US, they supply more than half of America's total imports in those categories. How much leverage does the US have in reverse? Only 12%. This isn't a negotiation between equals. It's an asymmetric dependency. China makes a strategic move like impose import fees or restricting rare earths. The US reacts with a blunt instrument like tariffs. China makes a small token concession. Trump tweets victory. And the underlying power dynamic shifts even further in China's favor. They're playing chess while Trump doesn't even know how to play checkers. Now let's check out some comments. Trump represented the United States' final desperate bid to regain global economic supremacy. Yet the critical shortage of rare earth elements reveals his efforts as nothing more than empty theatrics. Only Americans blinded by their hubris will require several more years to grasp this irreversible loss of dominance. The rest of the world has long since recognized the reality. I think China is playing a more intellectual game. Trump is for his own ego and can't think beyond that. He desperately needs to be surrounded by only those who say yes to him. China is too strong for Trump. So there you have it. This isn't about politics, it's about power, and the data is clear. China holds the economic high ground. They control the manufacturing, they control the critical materials, and they have a long-term strategy that is running circles around Washington's reactive tariff threats. Trump's desperation is showing. A 100% tariff is not a policy. It's a panic button. But what do you think? Is this the end of the trade war or just the beginning of a new, more intense phase? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more data-driven analysis that cuts through the noise, make sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss the next breakdown. Thanks for watching, and until next time, bye.
Yeah, and China will lose the US market, which, as I've said, is 15%.
We don't care. We don't care. China has been here for 5,000 years. Most of the time, there was no United States, and we survived. And if the United States wants to bully China, we will deal with the situation without the United States. And we expect to survive for another 5,000 years.